Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Mike and today's video is going to be all about eyeshadow palettes that have been discontinued or that were limited edition so that you can no longer buy, and which palettes that are currently on the market that I think can give you something similarly. I'm not calling these dupes because they are not particularly dupe palettes. It's not as if I want the color story to be a 100% match. I just think that if you are looking for this kind of palette, what this palette brings me that is no longer around, that if you buy this one or sometimes two or three palettes, you can get a very similar vibe. So in the case of this video, I've got 10 options for you here of palettes that are either very difficult to find or just really not around anymore, that are also some of my particular favorites that sadly are no longer here. So that's why I thought I could do this video to sort of let you know what I would recommend that you can buy as a replacement. And we're kicking off this video with the instigator of this entire video idea. I wanted to do a updated version of my best neutral palette video, which I did in January, so I'll link it in the eye above. And in that video, I sort of recommended the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde to replace one of my long-standing favorite neutral palettes, which is the White Chocolate Bar by Too Faced. So I feel that these two palettes give a similar look in terms of color story. They are not the same. So let me see if I can hold these up side by side for you. So there you have the two palettes together. And as you can see, the Too Faced one is far more neutral than the Huda Beauty one at first glance. However, the Huda Beauty one is also quite fair. It's got more of a rosy undertone rather than a neutrally brown undertone though, that I think is the main difference. But for instance, you get a peach in the Huda Beauty, you get some peaches in the Too Faced one, you get like a minty green. They're slightly different minty greens. It's probably a bit more turquoisey than this one. You get the lavenders. You get something to deepen things up. You get enough mattes to sort of put it together. What the Huda Beauty has that the Too Faced doesn't have is texture. So I find that the Mercury Retrograde well, it's not a full-on replacement. Like I said, this isn't a dupe, but because this palette, again, like it also has some more cool tones in here, some more neutrals over on this side. So this palette can give you a lot that the chocolate bar also provided and then some. This is of course a palette that not a lot of people loved, but I love it for my very pale skin. I'm wearing another palette you'll be seeing in a minute. So that is very dark and deep on me. But something like this I feel is perfect for like every day for this time of the year. And when I tried the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde, I got a very similar vibe of like the kind of looks that I do with it. This is very sort of whimsical, ethereal, and I feel I get the same thing from the Too Faced White Chocolate Bar. So that's why this had to be my first pairing. And I then want to move on to what is on my eyes today, because this is a very dark sort of wine colored look. And I created it using the Colourpop Wine and Only palette. Now, this is a combination because a lot of people are lamenting the loss of the Melt Cosmetics Myrte palette. But what if I told you that even cheaper than buying this one, if you buy these two Colourpop palettes, you can get a very similar vibe. So the Myrte palette, what I love about the Myrte palette is sort of like the tealy greens going into the navies and then those wine colored burgundy shades that it has. These two, I'm not like, the red is still nice, but that champagne shade I could do without in this one. But this is of course discontinued. All of a sudden it was gone. It was going to be limited edition. We kind of knew that, but it was all of a sudden it just disappeared and Melt no longer stocks it. And this is quite possibly one of the best Melt palettes that has ever been made. Now, if you buy these two Colourpop palettes, what you will be getting is some of these like murkier navy shades and also these murky wine shades that it has. So those kind of mattes you can also find in the Baroque by Colourpop and the Wine and Only. I cannot hold three palettes and hold them up for you, I'm afraid. But both these palettes I've now used, so I had to play around with this yesterday, and especially these three shades over on this side are very reminiscent of the grunginess of those blues that the Myrte has. And as you can see, I actually did a full-on red look with the Myrte as well, and I feel that whether I'm using the mattes in the Merte, or I'm using the mattes in this newer Colourpop Wine and Only palette, especially these two. Like, these are the ones that are in my crease, and then I use this to deepen things up, and I use that as liner. Like, it's just really, really deep, really sultry, really yummy, grungy color stories that I think if you were to combine these two, you get a very similar thing to what the Merte has to offer. Plus, of course, these are 9 pans, so in total you have 18 pans, whereas the Merte is 12. That has some turquoisey greens in that you don't have with these two, but I think the main stars of the show for everybody in that palette are those reds and those like really murky, grungy navies. Those are the shades that everybody goes for, it seems, and Colourpop has your back there. And these palettes are still available as stocks last, because with Colourpop, you just never know when they will be discontinuing something. But yeah, their palettes usually stay around for quite some time. Stocks may be difficult to figure out, but yeah, that I think can be a really nice alternative to the Melt Merte. Pairing number 3 is one that you might see coming, because I was saying that I wanted to show you replacements for some of my favorites. The Urban Decay Naked 2 has been discontinued, and this is one of my all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes. This is in my top 3 together with the Naked 3 and the Lorac Pro 3. Those are my 3 favorite, all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes. This is nicely cool toned. I've got dips in this, I've got dents in this. I reach for it every single year. If I just want to do a super basic, cool toned look, this is what I go for. But I have found, I think, the replacement, and I've been making some bold claims about the Natasha Denona Glam. I feel, can I put these together to show you, because I don't think I've done that yet. Do you just see that the Natasha Denona Glam and also the Urban Decay palette have a lot of similarities between them? Like, you get the rose gold that you get in YDK, you get some of the gold, you get some of the bronzes. The Natasha Denona has 3 more shades, and it doesn't have a black though. But it does have, ooh, let me put it away. It does have a little bit of warmth right here in that bottom right hand corner. Everything else is very, very neutral. The reason why I also think this is quite a good alternative for the Naked 2 is because this has quite a lot of shimmer. This only comes with 5 mattes, and everything else has shimmer to it, which I personally love. It's very light, it's very fair toned, and therefore another great everyday palette. Quality wise, this is in line with what I'm used to from something like the Natasha Denona Gold, which does mean it is slightly better quality than the Urban Decay, which needs to be built up a little bit more. However, I do really like a buildable formula like the Urban Decay, which is why the Urban Decay palettes are some of my favorites. I do really like that, but yeah, this is just, I feel, a more now version of the Urban Decay Naked 2, and it may very well have beaten this one from its top 3 spot. So I do need to play around with this a lot more though before it can have that status. This has been in my life for quite some time, so it's not going to be dethroned that easily. But yet, a Natasha Denona Glam, I think, is a great alternative to the Urban Decay Naked 2. Sticking to cool tones for a minute here, because I think we can just get those out of the way, because we all know we love cool tones, that I really like cool tones, I should say, but unfortunately they also seem to be discontinued quite quickly, unfortunately. So the Milani Soft and Sultry, it's always a pain to figure out how to show you this without blinding you, but I really like this palette, but it's getting very, very hard to find. I find this not super cool toned. It does have quite a bit of warmth in these 2 rows. I feel that this middle row is the main cool tone thing. But what I think can easily replace this, and this is one where I'm like, oh, how long is this still going to be around for? Because another brand that discontinues palettes left and right is BH Cosmetics. And I think the Love in London will give you this, but then with some extra shades. That's what the actual palette looks like. I always have the sleeve with me as well. Let me see if I can show you these together. So that's what the Love in London looks like. And then you can see that the Love in London also has a little bit of that warmth, but then also the cool toneness of some of the taupes that it has. Plus you get these like blues and purples that the Milani doesn't have, because this does have a couple of extra shades, of course. So I feel that this is sort of like, I still really like the Soft and Sultry for that old, like neutrally kind of look. I do still really like it for that, but you know how much I've been raving about the Love in London. This was like one of my favorite palettes of 2020. I did buy it in 2019 and then tried it in 2020. But yeah, ever since I tried this, I've been in love with BH's formula. So that's why I thought, if you can't find this, or if you find this and it's super expensive because Milani is marked up so much where I live, then this is an even more affordable alternative to something like the Soft and Sultry. So if you missed out on this one, try this. I said we would be keeping the cool train rolling, and we are going to do that with some mini palettes. I think that these two palettes are quite similar and that you don't necessarily need both in your collection if you were considering either one of these. The one that is harder to find is the the Lime Crime Venus Immortalis. This I think is currently only still for sale on the Lime Crime website. It seems to have been limited edition for Christmas, not 2020 but 2019. I managed to snatch one up, but I feel that the Nabla Cutie Platinum palette is very similar to the Lime Crime one. I did buy this one a little bit later, and then I was like, yeah, it does do something very similarly. However, I do think there is a very big difference why I think that more people might like this. A gripe that a lot of people had with the Lime Crime was that it developed hard pan for them. Mine is fine. I've had this for more than a year. These shades still feel buttery smooth, and I can still very easily pick them up. This is incredibly cool toned. It's very gray leaning. You get a very stark silver in here. I love the taupe. And then it goes quite light and quite deep, and you don't have a lot going on in between. I do still really like this. If I want to go super grungy cool toned, then this is the kind of cool toned color story that I love, because especially if you combine that gray and that plum and then with the taupe, so lovely. The Nabla Cutie palette I feel does something very similarly, because you do get a really nice dark brown and a really stark silver and a really good taupe as well. The taupe, for me, has developed a little bit of heart pan in this one. I can still pick it up, but it does feel a little tough. But yeah, it still works. There's nothing wrong with the palette, you could say. But yeah, that taupey shade is really lovely. But what this has going for it that the Venus XL doesn't have is that this has some warmth with the gold and also these three shades. However, depending on your undertone, these two brownish shades pull a little bit more pink toned. That's what they do on my cool to neutral undertone. So, but if you are more warm toned and you have more of an olive undertone perhaps, then these will look more brown. So I think that this is the kind of cool tone palette for people who don't like cool tones. Whereas this was so super duper cool toned that a lot of people were like, no, this is almost like too much for me. But I do feel they are both really nicely curated color stories, which is why they sort of fit together in my brain. This one you can no longer find. This one you can still find, and I think it's more accessible for more people. And then finally, for the cool tone selection, sadly, Zoeva has been discontinuing a ton of their eyeshadow palettes. By now, you can only sort of get their core selection still, and everything else has disappeared. So the On Taupe, which is one of my very all-time favorite cool tone color stories, is no longer around, and it's such a shame. This is not as taupe as you might expect. It really only has like one true taupe. And everything else is quite like plummy. It's very fair, it's very neutral. It had these two stunning duochromes, but you can no longer get it. So I've got two alternatives for you. These are, depending on what you are looking for in a taupe palette, you can choose which one you think is the better alternative yourselves. Because both Colourpop and Juvia's Place came out with a taupe palette. I've tried both. I think that if you're really looking for that very fair thing that the On Taupe does, if that's your thing, if you're super pale like me, you want something super neutral, super basic, I would go with the Juvia's Place. I know, Juvia's Place. They're a black-owned beauty brand, but they do color stories for even the palest of the pale, and that's what this has to offer. A lot of people have been decluttering this, didn't like it very much, are saying these shades are lackluster. I absolutely had no issues with these shades skipping on me or looking weird. They are just incredibly light. So unless you have a very deep undertone and you use a white base, this will have trouble showing up. It just will. On me, on my, oh, I'm looking super pale today, especially with that red toned eye. It's just like really making me look like Snow White. Plus we've got snow outside, so there's lots of light reflecting from outside, I feel. So yes, it's been a whole thing. Yeah, this is what happens to me in the wintertime. I just go Snow White Pale. And then a palette like this just works, especially the shimmers in this I love. This does have a little bit more warmth to it, I feel, than the Zoeva, because you do get this like warmish brown, and also this is a bit more warm toned. So again, perhaps even a little bit more accessible, because I know a lot of people do like a little bit of warmth in their looks. It's not a very gray toned taupe, for sure. But yeah, this has some lovely shades. It's super fair, and therefore it works. But Colourpop, of course, came out with the Death's Taupe. And this is for that very shimmery goodness moment, because these shimmers are life. I've tried this palette once so far. I felt it pulled darker on me than I had expected when looking at it in the pan, especially this shade right here looked much darker. Was it still very wearable, very neutral? Yes, for sure. Could it have been more taupe? Yes, for sure, I do believe so. I feel that, for instance, this and also this make it a bit more brown. I do appreciate, though, that you get a very nice green toned taupe. Those are very hard to find. This is just a little bit too silvery, perhaps. But yeah, the three shimmers in here are lovely, and I did really like that matte. I haven't tried the Stone Cold Fox yet, because I do think that perhaps once I try that, that could replace like all of the cool tone stuff I just showed you, because that has like, what, 32 shades? I think that can do some of the grayness of the Lime Crime Venus XL. It can do some of the rosiness of something like the On Taupe for sure, but I haven't tried that one yet, and I don't want to recommend things that I haven't tried, because then I don't know how it plays out. But yeah, if you had been lusting after the Zoeva On Taupe and you didn't manage to pick it up, then go for these two. They do something differently. For me, this is the more perfect option, weirdly enough, because it is just a little bit more fair toned, but this one is a lovely pick too. Sticking with discontinued Zoeva palettes for a minute, the Blanc Fusion is by probably my favorite Zoeva palette. That's a bold statement to make, but yeah, it's no longer around. I got this once as part of a set, and it's like cool tone neutrals with yellow tone, like mustardy kind of shades. And I was like, you know what would be perfect to replace this? Now you can no longer get it. A combination of these two palettes. So for the yellow tones and the mustards, I would recommend the Urban Decay Naked Honey, which has all of those tones. Especially those very yellow tones in the middle, I find offer something very similarly to what the Zoeva has to offer as well. And then for that very neutrally moment, I would go in with the Naked 2, because again, those shades are very similar. But here's the conundrum. I have found out since planning this video that Urban Decay has or is discontinuing the Naked Honey and the Naked Cherry palette. So very soon you will no longer be able to make that combo. So I thought I could come up with another alternative, which is again, sadly, Colourpop. If you find Colourpop difficult to get, I do apologize. But if you were to combine the Going Coconuts and the Naked Honey, the Aha Honey, then again, I think you can get something similarly. Oh, there's shades that have shifted. Oh no. My Naked, there we go again. My Aha Honey is an absolute mess. I had to repress these shades, and they're still puffing up a little bit. But yeah, I think if you were to do that, you get those yellow tones. If you were to make that combo, you've got the yellow tones. And then from the Going Coconuts, you can get the very neutrally shades. It's not perhaps as cool toned as some of the in the Zoeva, but these are neutral enough that I feel they will work better with those yellow tones from the Aha Honey than the That's Taupe, because that is more cool toned leaning, and I think you need a bit more warmth to really have that sort of neutrally moment. So I feel that this would make for a better replacement. And we're sticking with Colourpop for a minute, but not as the brand to get as a replacement, because this is the palette that has been discontinued. And the palette that I'm hoping is going to dupe this out, or at least be a good alternative, I don't own yet, but I'm itching. March 1st it will be out. The Dreams Dream palette from Colourpop and Kathleen Lights is a warm tone neutral palette with teals. Guess what has just launched over in the US and what comes out on March 1st in my country? The Urban Decay Naked Wild West, which is a warm tone palette with teals. So I figured I'm just already going to throw it in here, because I think that the Colourpop has something similarly going on with something like Water Bearer. I think that can be a shade that's in there. I think this shade Stardust is also like a shade that's similar to something that's in the Naked Wild Wild West. So I'm very looking forward to it, because very often Colourpop is the one duping other brands because they are always coming up with the alternatives. I mean, that Wine and Only palette that's on my eyes today is sort of their rendition of the Huda Beauty, what's it called again? New Naughty Nudes, whatever that holiday palette Huda Beauty came out with. But yeah, for like once in their career, Colourpop is the one being duped. I don't think Urban Decay had intended that to happen, but I was just going through my collection to plan this video, and I was like, that might be a good alternative. So if you missed out on the Colourpop Dream Streak because this is no longer around, the new Urban Decay Naked Wild West might be a good alternative, even though I've heard that is also limited edition, but not sure how long that's going to be around, because with some Urban Decay palettes, they can be around for months before they are taken off of shelves. And then I also wanted to throw in some color here, because a lot of it is just quite boring and neutral, and I'm very aware, but a brand you can no longer get is Blush Tribe. This brand was discontinued, but there has seen it too. Anyone who has tried this, I think there isn't a single person who didn't love this. It's got greens, blues, and purples. And I haven't really found a lot of other brands combining those shades in one palette, in like one color story. Save for, at least not the ones that I own. I'm pretty sure there are a few, but I own this. This is the Sample Beauty Hydrographic palette, and mind you, this is not the same, but if you're looking for that blue, green, purple moment from a brand you can still get, you can buy this off Beauty Bay. Do you just see that? This has more murky, grungy shades. This is all brights. That's the main difference, but do you just see that? You could do very similar things with both of these. So I'm thinking, hey, if the Blush Tribe is one you missed out on because the brand was discontinued, then maybe try the Sample Beauty Hydrographic. And then finally, the 10th palette combo is one that, if you have been with me for some time, I have recommended before, but a palette that is sort of like going in and out of stock, and the question is this being discontinued, yay or nay? We just kind of don't know, because it randomly came back in stock last fall. So who knows, maybe they'll do another restock of this, but it's the Tribe palette by Juvia's Place. And this is a stunning, again, tealy greens. You know how I feel about teals, okay? Teal and taupe is my favorite thing on the planet. So that's why I'm going to put in lots of recommendations for that. You get some really stunning duochromes in here. You get those oranges, you get some like brighter greens. Really cool color story. It's just not unique to the market, because OPV, Tropical Dreams? Yeah, Tropical Dreams. There are so many tropical something palettes on the market that I always mix up which one is which. But again, let me put these side by side. You get many more shades in the OPV palette, because you get some turquoises and like some other shades. But that dark matte teal is in here. That dark teal shimmer is in here. That grassy green matte is in here. That neon-y highlightery yellow shade is in here. Those oranges are in here, and then some. So I feel that this is sort of like the Tribe palette on steroids, and the quality of this is amazing. It smells like cheap makeup, but so did the Juvia's Place Valhalla palette I found. It has the same smell as that. But yeah, this was excellent quality. I'm super stoked to own this, because this is sort of like, if we need to go like blue-green sort of like color story, then give me something like this. I could do without the like very yellow tone gold, and something like this. Like this shade looks quite similar to this one over here. So I do feel there are some like superfluous shades, you could say, but I'm down. Like this turquoise, that blue, this like green blue, like this reminds me so much of a Sydney Gray shadow I have called Dive. It's like a salt water kind of grayish blue with a golden flip. It's great. So if you want this plus blues, get the OPV one, because it's stunning. So there you have it. Those are all of the palette alternatives that I wanted to share with you today. So these are discontinued palettes that I think, if you're looking for similar color stories that can give you a similar vibe, these would be my picks. Are they 100% dupes? By no means, but I would love to know if you have any of these pairings that you know of where you're like, this discontinued palette can very easily be done by using this. Of course, you could also just buy a bunch of singles from indie brands and build your palette that way. However, that's usually going to be more expensive than buying, for instance, 2 Colourpop palettes, because that's going to be more affordable than buying a bunch of singles, just saying. So yeah, without further ado, thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more by me. I make 3 new videos a week, so I hope to see you in my next one. Bye bye!